markets, a training development officer, and she was also a training development coordinator during her stay at the Bank of Philippine Islands. Also, she worked with Coca-Cola Beverages Philippines Incorporated for almost 3 years, and some of her functions include the Culture and Communications Executive, the Talent Deployment Executive, the Talent Planning Executive for Head Office. She was also part with the AB Heineken Philippines Incorporated as its HR business partner for supply chain and learning lead. Moreover, she has worked with Reckitt as its HR business partner for non-commercial, supply chain, finance, regulatory, research and development, IT, and general management's office. And presently, she is connected with Mondelez International as its people lead in sales. We are honored to be graced by her presence for tonight as she would share to us her expertise and experiences with the topic on value proposition, customer and markets, a guide to how corporations think. Please help me welcome Miss Alaris Domingo Antonio. Miss Ai, good evening po.
Hello, maayong gabi sa inyo lahat. You can call me Ai. It's nice to finally meet all of you. And Nash and I are very happy because it's an intimate session. So please consider this as a very informal, conversation so that we can learn about techpreneurship. It's quite a tongue twister. And allow me to, ang hirap, pero but it's a really nice term. But allow me to, Nash and I to have that conversation with the family of our engineers, lovely engineers for tonight, so that you can also learn from each other. So I will show you what my lenses are, so that I'm also able to prepare you all as you pursue the real world. So yep, thank you so much, Nash. I'm very happy to be here and take it away, whatever it is that we have in store for everyone.
Yeah, don't worry everyone, say I've said this will be a bit of an informal session. So, di ba, our previous resource speakers, we were used to that na they would present who they are, their startups, their stories. But this one, it's a bit of more like a talk show. Parang nag-uusap lang po tayo. Talaga kung kapihan session ito. The real deal of kapihan session. So if you have some coffees there or tea or even your dinner, feel free to join us po. So basically, I will just be conversing with Miss Ai in this session, and feel free to butt in or you can type in the chat box your questions. So Miss Ai here, as I have shared earlier, she has the wealth of experience from being all of those institutions I've introduced earlier. So our goal for this evening is actually to extract information from her as to how the concepts of value proposition, markets, and customers would apply, especially to the corporate world. So you've been introduced already to the entrepreneurial. We have invited entrepreneurs previously, startup founders, and even the ecosystem. But right now, let's go to those who are much more mature in terms of business. So we'll go to corporations. So Miss Ai, being in a lot of very international companies, so this will be quite exciting. So again, feel free to ask your questions in the chat box, or you could raise your hand, or just open your microphone and let's have this conversation. So ito, para akong talk show host dito. Miss Ai, maybe you could share, well, I did an introduction earlier, but maybe you could share from your perspective, your experiences from, let's say, after graduating, and
Yep.
how you were able to be acquainted with a lot of very big international corporations po. Maybe as a start po.
Sure. That's a great question, no, Nash. First and foremost, I'd like to say good evening to everyone. And hello, good evening, Princess. Thank you for the lovely welcome. So let us start with that first question. So more of kwentuhan kung ano yung background ko, how I ended up in HR, or why am I pursuing this career as of this moment. So actually, ano to, it's honestly partly accidental. Nung when I was in high school, I really didn't know what I wanted to pursue. So para I knew that I talked a lot. I like to, crack jokes. And at first, I wanted to pursue a career in mass communications. But then, my dad told me to shift to BS Mathematics because sayang naman daw yung math honors experience ko that I've had from my high school. So when I initially pursued BS Math, I hope it's somehow close to your profile, no, as engineers. I did pursue it for 3 years in college with the aspiration of becoming a teacher. So going back to the academe and teaching math to high school students, because just like Nash, I was, I've been quite idealistic on things. And then by chance, I ended up in ROTC. I was hinatak ako nung friend ko para hindi na kami NSTP sa labas. And then I really liked the concept of ROTC, not because of the physical exercise, but because of the ideologies that were being imparted to us in Ateneo. So same tayo, mga Atenista tayong lahat. 'Di ba? So yun yung sa Katipunan. So I realized that I might not be patient in imparting knowledge to high school students. Instead, parang I would want to teach or impart knowledge on adults. Hence, I was interested in coaching, nurturing people, etc. And that's how it came about. I said, okay, but why don't I try HR? Doon ako nagsimula. And my first background was working for a bank. Because my battle scar during that time was I was struggling in BS Math because it wasn't something that I liked very much. The curriculum of math in college was more directed towards actuarial science, but I wanted to go for more of a BSE or a BS education. So it wasn't a good ammo for me to get into the companies that I wanted to pursue. So the usual companies that you would normally pursue are the likes of the FMCGs, the Procter and Gamble, the Nestle, Coca-Cola, etc. Because they were looking for those with Latin honors. So at the very onset, it was very difficult for me. And yet I chanced upon, life took me to work for a bank because there was an opportunity there for HR, which was more on learning and development. So I said, okay, sure, why not pursue it? And those were the best days of my life. So I've been exposed to leaders who came from the multinational industry and they wanted to pay back to the local industry. So a lot of them came from Procter and Gamble, actually, from other industries such as Oracle and other industries that are multinational. And I learned their ways, basically, which was actually far from the conventions that local bankers are used to, because banking is more about bureaucratic, alam mo yun, yung parang more on speed, not so much about speed but more about following the process. Syempre, pag banko, di ba, yung very secure tayo when it comes to information, when it comes to managing money. So, ganun din yung handling nila in terms of the corporation. But despite that, I've been fortunate to have been exposed to these types of leaders, and it helped me determine how I should understand where these corporate people are, how these corporate people are deciding, and it was an opportunity for me as a person, as a professional who was beginning her career in human resources, for me to understand what was going on in their minds. And during the preliminary stages, I was able to understand the behaviors and the current skills and where they want to go, for branch pursuing a more sophisticated skills on financial advisory. So yun, that was my background on banking. More on knowledge and skills, learning and development, until they moved me to a more expanded role, which was a little bit about business partnering. So I also work closely with people outside the traditional bank. So yung traditional bank is more about the branches, yung loans, 'di ba? Yun yung doon sila kilala. But after beyond that, may mga other banks, other functions within the banking industry, which are more on investment banking, stock trading, etc. So yung mga non-conventional. So yun, I was able to partner with them, understand their needs, etc. So that was my preliminary experience of engaging with the business leaders. Until my last role there was a little bit about recruitment until I was invited by my very first FMCG that I've worked for, which was Coca-Cola Beverages. Now, for Coca-Cola Beverages, I've spent some 3 years there. And then, iba naman yung naging exposure ko. It was more on talent management. So, I don't want to bore you all with a lot of technical stuff. But basically, it's about understanding people in light of how you would label them in terms of performance, how they are placed within the organization, sino yung mga valued talents namin. Ayan, si Nash. Nash is a valued talent, no? Mamaya, kukwento ko in Heineken. Ano yan? Pride yan of Heineken. So, yun. So basically, parang that was my exposure and those were the things that I've learned when it comes to working with leaders in Coca-Cola. So I was working for the bottling side. If you guys might not know, Coca-Cola is actually divided into 2 functions. So meron tayong the Coca-Cola company, which is more on yung the ones that you see on commercials, yung Taste the Feeling, Open Happiness, the brand side, and then you have the bottling side. So, yung bottling side, yun yung, dun pumapasok yung mga planta, tsaka yung mga distribution centers. I know that the nearest one in CDO is in MOP. So, ang tawag namin doon, MOP is Misamis Oriental Plant. It's one of our biggest or mega plants that produces a lot of products. No, so yon, ando kami sa side na yon, and naka-assign ako sa head office during that time. I worked with a lot of people. Back then, the bottling side of Coca-Cola was owned by FEMSA. FEMSA is a Latin American company, so you would imagine that I was dealing with these very strong personalities na Latinos. Iba magtrabaho yung mga Latinos, and as Filipinos, we had to marry, we have to make both ends meet in terms of culture, no? So, them being more upfront and Filipinos being more shy, diba? Na parang mas nahiya, they would rather listen, etc. and say yes to many things. So yun yung naging background ko on Coca-Cola until by fate, no, I was invited. Someone reached out to me who is currently my mentor to pursue an opportunity in Heineken. So that's where I met Nash. So Nash was assigned in our El Salvador plant. At first, akala ko El Salvador is in a Latin American country, but only to find out that El Salvador is actually in Cagayan de Oro. So yun, I was asked, I've been invited. Scam talaga na. So I've been invited to take on an HR business partner role. So I did mention earlier na parang wala akong HR business partner role in BPI and Coca-Cola. Kasi more about engaging with different leaders within the corporation. Pero this time, when I was assigned in Heineken, when I've been invited by Heineken to take on an HR business partner role, it was really directly working closely with the business, meaning with the supply chain business, supply chain leaders, to understand their needs and determining how I, as their mini HR head, can drive engagement and drive growth by empowering the people. So yun yung goal ko. Yun yung role ko. If I were to describe my role, ako yung in-house HR consultant nila to understand what's going on in terms of people in supply chain, and me diagnosing and giving my solution to them. Para akong consultant. Di ba ganun kayo pag inhinyero kayo, you try to understand where the corporation is coming from, and then you diagnose it. Parang doctor, and you give sound solutions that would be impactful for the business. That was my main role. I spent some 2 years. No, it was very memorable because it was my very first HR business partner role. And I met Nash there, who was assigned in the El Salvador plant. So every month or every other month, my partner, who was a technical trainer, his name is Leo, and I would travel to Cagayan de Oro every now and then, just so we could visit our colleagues there and understand what's going on, and for us to understand what are our current needs with the brewery manager in El Salvador, until such fate happened when the partnership, the joint venture between Asia Brewery and Heineken, have decided to call it quits. And during that time, I was on maternity leave. I gave birth. I recently gave birth in September of 2020. Tapos nalaman nga namin na yung decision ni Lucio Tan was for just to cut the partnership, and that's the reason why they had to shrink the Heineken business so that they can start a new, and it was a new chapter for me. So sabi ko, okay, what am I gonna do after this, considering that I just gave birth? And fortunately, after that, I've been invited by another company to take on a similar role but expanded. So I've been invited by Reckitt, which is another fast-moving consumer goods. So kung mapapansin niyo, lahat FMCGs na, starting from Coke. No? So from Coke, it was more about beverages, and then Heineken is more about, it's also beverages, but it's focused on alcohol. Tapos sa Reckitt naman, ang focus naman nila are several products. So the products would include infant nutrition, so your the likes of Lactome, Enfa, etc. And then you also have hygiene products such as Lysol, which is very relevant for our times today, as well as little health-related products such as your likes of Strepsils, and then part of the portfolio is also Durex. It's a UK company, by the way. So Coca-Cola is an American company, led by Latinos during that time, Mexicans specifically, and then you have Heineken, which is a Dutch company, and then Reckitt is a British company, so UK. And then I was supposed to stabilize there. So nung time na nagkahiwalay kaming lahat sa Heineken, nagkahiwalay kami nung mentor ko, we knew that we had to part ways. And we felt that it was a unfinished business for me and my mentor. So ang nangyari noon, when I was already stabilizing in Reckitt, because I'm very fortunate that finally I have a job, again, very grateful because it will also help the family. I was contacted by my mentor in Heineken, who was invited by Mondelez International to take on an HR director role. And she said that, I know that it's so awkward because you've only been with Reckitt for 3 months or 4 months. So why don't you just try it out? If it doesn't work out, okay lang. Kasi I'm not with Reckitt. But secretly, I told her actually that I really wanted to decline. Because parang ang pangit, diba? Kasi nagsimula ka lang sa Reckitt and you were trying to stabilize your credibility, establishing relationships with people, and it's not overnight. So yun, I said sure, I'll go through the process. Ayokong pahiyain yung mentor ko. So I really did my best, only to find out na parang ako yung na shortlist and identify out of all the candidates. So it was really such a tough decision kasi sabi ko, shucks, parang is it stability or taking a leap of faith? Because the career that was given to me, yung opportunity that was given to me, dati kasi supply chain ako. And part of my tracking as an HR business partner is kailangan kong tumawid na dun sa sales side. So had I stayed in Reckitt, magtatagal ako dun sa non-sales side. Pero it might take a while for me to, para kasi kailangan ko ikutin yung negosyo, yung business, for me to understand the value chain of the whole organization. So alam ko na yung sa planta, alam ko na yung sa mga support functions. Yung missing piece ko na lang is yung commercial, yung sales. So she really, binudol niya ako, net. Sabi niya, I think this is an opportunity that is difficult to pass up. And it's unfinished business for the both of us in terms of her nurturing me. So yun, I took a leap of faith. You could imagine all yung mura na nakuha ko dun sa HR director ko, who was also Dutch in Reckitt kasi kakasimula ko pa lang. And I really said sorry. I said that it was a career move that was hard to pass up. No? It's a challenge that I wanted to take, and here I am. Here I am having the time of my life and enjoying and thinking and creating ideas for the commercial business. So I'll stop there. I know it's a lot of stories para at least maintindihan nyo kung ano yung background ko. It's mostly about engaging with corporations, and they say that HR people are not they are not HR first, but they are business people first. Then HR next. Ganun din yon. Hindi kayo engineers first, but you are business people first, then engineers next. Kasi kailangan nyo intindihin kung ano yung what would be good for the business. So national pause there, as I shared my life story, or yung career story, and then we can continue as we go along. So yep, Nash, I hope I was able to answer your first question. It's quite a handful. Oh, okay. Magre-relog lang daw si Nash. O sige, while we're waiting for Nash, mga musta muna ako sa inyo. If anybody could unmute. Ayan, are you back, Nash? Are you back? I think you're on mute. I think pa rin siya. Wala akong okay, yan. He's logging out. Oh, kamusta muna kayo? Anybody who'd like to unmute himself and herself? Kamusta naman? Kamusta naman kayo? And how's your Thursday evening? Yeah, can you hear me, Nash? Sige, while we're waiting for Nash, ayan, kamusta yun? Huwag kayong matakot hindi to walang quiz. Wow. Walang quiz, nagkukwentuhan lang tayo. So, kamusta? How's everything, guys?
Okay lang po.
Hello, Princess. Kamusta? Saan ka where are you residing? Ma'am, saan ka
Sa Uptown po.
Okay. So, nasa bahay lang kayo lahat?
At the moment, yes po.
Okay.
At the moment.
Kamusta naman? Ano ang kaganapan dyan, Princess? In school, kahit magkwento ka lang sa group, no?
Hala, masyadong mahaba-haba.
Hindi, kahit lang. 2 seconds. Joke lang.
Teacher lang po.
Anong ganap?
Siguro, wala naman. Akads lang.
Graduate friends. Akads and friends. Ay, maganda yan. Real world. Wow.
Hindi po. Pwede extend.
Ano ba? Paki-raise ang hand kung yun din ang mafe-feel mo. Takot ka ba? Anong feeling? Anong general feeling, Princess? Talaga in-interview.
Sabi mo po. Pero siguro tawag dito, parang hindi ako ready.
Hindi ka ready for the real world.
Yes. Medyo kinakabahan pa.
Kinakabahan ka sa kung ano yung ikahaharap mo sa real world. Yun ang general feeling mo.
Oo, medyo pa ako, tawag dito, feeling student pa.
Okay lang yan. Naku, lubusin mo yan, Princess. Masarap maging bata. Naku, pag umabot ka ng 10 years, katulad ko, naku, hindi naman ako jaded, no? Masaya pa rin naman ako. Pero, i-keep mo lang yung idealism na yan kasi mamumulat talaga yung mata niyo sa mga bagay na makikita niyo. Kasi depende. Anong plano mo pala? Sorry talaga inaano kita, Princess. Next time, yung mga iba, after this, pwede naman tayong makipagkwentuhan sa iba. Pero ano bang plano mo after? May plans ka ba na definite? Like, mag-apply ka ba for a company or mag-build ka ba ng business?
Actually, at first ko kasi, mag-apply for work muna, of course. Pero after kasi after ng board, like, mag-law kasi ako. Yeah.
Wow! So, mag-law school ka after. Pero, alis ka ng CDO o within CDO ka?
Within CDO lang.
Okay. Akala ko mag-travel out ka.
Sana nga yun lang, pero di carry.
Let's see. Well, all the best, Princess. That's great
Yes.
aspiration, and I wish you all the best. Yung ano ko, yung asawa ko, abogado. Kaya, kaya kung ano naman sinasabi ko, Nash, mamaya kung ano yung mga ituturo ko sa mga estudyante mo.
Sorry, I had problems with the audio. I had to restart my computer.
No worries ako, Nash. Okay
Ito
lang
ko.
yan. Nagkukwentuhan lang naman kami.
Yeah, kintuhan lang
Interview
po
ko si Vince.
guys. This would be a different than what he had. So, Miss Ayi here is, as she's shared, she's been with, if you have, yun nga, I invited her because in case you have questions, especially in terms of HR, in terms of siguro work, pwede to si Miss Ayi. That's a new connection for you guys. We'll be, Miss Ayi, if it's okay, Miss Ayi will be providing her, siguro, her contact her email rather, para makontak niyo siya. So, let me just go back to the discussion, Miss Ayi. Apologies for the
No
interruption.
problem. No
So, yun.
problem.
Sabi nga ni Miss Ai, di ba, as our first job, our thinking should be, ano yun, Miss Ai?
Business
before
first. Business first, engineers after. Kasi ganun din ako eh. Business first, HR after.
Yeah. If I could remember when I was in Heineken, sabi nga ni Miss Ai, working with different nationalities, yung boss namin before, Bulgarian. So, he's very proud that he's been part of the military. So, yun, the approach is a bit para nasa military. So, yun, what I got from him actually was that there was this one time he asked me what my job was. So I told him my job is to produce beer because that's what I do. I produce beer, and he told me that that's only part of your real job. My real job is to sell beer.
Yes.
My job is to sell beer, and making sure that it is of quality is just part of it. So yun, hopefully when you become, you'll be in the industry. So let's say for civil engineers, you'll be working in let's say building bridges, building, what do you call this, building houses. So what is your job? Your job is to sell that idea that you need to build a bridge, or your design is you have the best design so that this could be what is being built. Or for chemical engineers, just like what my experience is, if you're in Coke, your job is to sell Coke.
Yeah.
Or if you're in Reckitt, your job is to sell that Lysol, to sell that Durex, to sell that ano pa nga yung products.
Strepsils.
Yeah. Yes po, that po. And in Mondelez po, your products are?
Cookies, Chips Ahoy, Oreo, Cheese Whiz, Tang, ano ba yun? Cadbury.
Cadbury, di ba?
Toblerone.
And ito si Miss Ai is based in the Philippines, ha? Baka sabihin niyo nasa ibang Ukraine siya. She's in the Philippines. So, yun po, that kind of mindset is what we are trying to inculcate in this course. So, on my experience, when I came into the plant, wala ho talaga akong business acumen, just to be frank. So yun, ang akin lang is what I've learned, the engineering things that I've learned in the plant. But when you are in that dynamics, it's very important also that you have this entrepreneurial mind, because your job is actually to sell. That's basically what is being important, because kami nga, we had the best beer in the world. Heineken is an international brand. But because that there is no market, wala kaming market during the pandemic, wala kaming customer during the pandemic, and we had to change strategies. The company has to change strategies for that. So yun, unfortunately, it nag-divorce yung company namin. So yun, if we can't sell, that's very important acumen that we need to learn as engineers. So we are actually quite doing it naman. So yung product natin is yung sarili natin. So yun, later on, you'll be facing HR managers or HR personnel, just like Miss Ai. So yun, you will be selling yourself, and having that business acumen is also very important. So yun nga, we've been through different sessions already. You've been introduced na to our startups, how they were able to sell themselves. So basically what the startups are doing are they're selling their ideas in order for it to become a business. And just like this course, we will take another kind of mindset, this time sa corporate, because corporations are very mature businesses. It's different from startups who are just starting. So yun nga, it will always start with a very good idea. Sometimes it's very charitable, di ba? We've seen how Sir Hope in his business, also Miss Jill on her Saliksik app, what she was trying to develop. But at the end of it, it will all boil down to financials. Yun po. No matter how great your idea is, if hindi po siya sellable, there's a problem there, because the main purpose of having a business is to profit, and that might seem anong tawag nito, that might not be attractive.
Heartless, parang
That might seem heartless po, but that's actually it. And it's not really a bad thing, because when that's your goal, you generate a lot of employment opportunities to everyone. So it's really kind of a mindset. It's yung sa startups, they're still starting 2 to 3 years, but the companies that ako at saka si Miss Ai has been part is parang yung Heineken 1800s pa yon. So that's quite a long time. So they've developed this kind of culture. So yun yung what we're trying to inculcate here, is that kind of mindset also. So it's good to be good, but of course we have to go past through that. And that's why it's very important, as I have been saying since the beginning, to know the concepts of customer value proposition and markets, because at the end of it, that will be your guiding star as to how you will sell your product. And it doesn't mean naman na if that's what you've established, yun na yun. I mean, it always we have to be realistic, and we have to go with the times. Just like what our experience with Heineken, na if Heineken is not after for profit, if good lang yung gusto niya, so nandun pa rin kami earning. So but they had to change their strategies, and it was for us. So ako personally, I've been to 2 business closures na, so it's a bit painful, especially for others. So ngayon, going back to the topic, sige Miss Ai, you've been to these different institutions with varied product lines. Sa BPI, you've mentioned that you have several accounts. May savings account, may trading account, merong for commodities and all. You've been to Coke. You've shared to us that there are different production lines of Coke. Merong Coke, Royal, Sprite, at iba't iba pa. Also, when we were with Heineken, we had several products. We had Heineken, we had Tiger, we had Beer na Beer, we had Colt 45. When you were at Reckitt, you had several products, Lysol, Strepsils, Durex, and some others. And right now with Mondelez, you have this Cadbury, you had a lot more products. So can you share to us po what's happening behind closed doors when decisions are being made in terms of how you choose customers for these products, and how the value is being determined to these products offer? By value, what I mean to say is yung tagline nila. So how is it being decided on how we could relate it to value proposition? And lastly, siguro yung mga strategies happening in the corporate world on where and how do we sell them. So doon lang po, maybe you could share a few points on those things.
Sure. First and foremost, Nash, I love the way na tinawid mo yun, yung insights coming from my story, and how it ties with us taking on an enterprise mindset or techpreneurial mindset before we can, demonstrate or parang showcase yung expertise natin as engineers. So I wanted to call that out, and what would be the stark difference between startups and corporations. So to answer Nash's question on what would be the normal things that would be discussed amongst at least yung mga senior leaders natin, as a caveat, ito yung mga na-observe ko during those times. Kasi syempre sa BPI, I've stayed there for 6 years. So ano lang ang context? Stayed there for 6 years, 2010 till 2016. Tapos sa Coca-Cola, that's 2016 to 2019. Heineken, that's 2019 to 2020. Reckitt is 2021. And then Mondelez is 2021. So context lang ha, kasi parang syempre yung masashare ko na nangyari or what I've observed when the time that I was with those companies. But at least for you to have an idea as to what it's about. Specifically for BPI, they were in a journey wherein, kasi kung mapapansin niyo, syempre diba, a lot of us know BPI. BPI is one of the strongest local banks here in the Philippines, and it's the oldest bank in Asia, actually. So, over time, as with any corporation, lumalaki siya ng lumalaki, and it gets complex, no? So, a corporation can either grow organically by selling products to individual and group customers, but other companies also grow inorganically. So ibig sabihin bibili ka ng isa pang kumpanya, 'di ba? Pag mag-merge, halimbawa yung BPI kinain niya yung BPI Family Savings Bank. Kaya ngayon one BPI na sila. Before separate pa sila, BPI nung panahon ko, BPI and BPI Family Bank. Now, as in like this year or I think last year, kinonvert na nila yun to one BPI. Okay, so let's start muna with BPI. Ang BPI, nagsimula siya with showcasing or parang understanding customers in light of products. So parang it's very product-centric na to the point na nung time na yon, they've considered the portfolio to be very complex. Kasi para sa FMCG, sabi nga ni Nash, you're selling like simple products. So you consume it, di ba? May beer, inumin mo, Coke, inumin mo. Pero kasi, ang binibenta mo kasi sa banking, it's not just the product. They're not selling you the ATM card or they're not selling just the credit card. They are selling the relationship. Kailangan mong magstay. The more sticky or the stickier the relationship of the customer with the bank, the more profit or parang mas naging lucrative siya. Kasi syempre mas matagal yung na-establish yung business. So okay, anyway, for BPI, initially their perspective was product centric. So ganun yun, hiwa-hiwalay, merong cards division, merong loans division, merong deposits division, merong hiwalay yung BPI Capital, that's more on venture, investment banking. So that's dealing with mergers and acquisitions. Tapos you also have a separate entity called BPI Trade, which is more on the stock trading side. And we felt that the management back then felt that it was too complex and it wasn't targeting the exact customer value proposition. And I remember during that time, sakto kasi parang when Nash mentioned what parang can you talk a little bit about customer value proposition? Sa lahat ng mga kumpanya na napagtrabahuan ko, actually yung BPI lang, yung gumamit ng lengguwahe na yun, which is CVP. And CVP is, it's basically the aspiration that is targeted to the customer. So, for a time, ang naging decision nila, of course, it was a constant collaboration with the senior leaders, and I believe they've contracted the help of someone from outside. So, it could have been a consultant, to support them in the thinking process. They had to shift from being product centric to being customer centric. Kaya the N word back then was customer centricity. So everything that you do has to be circled around the needs of the customer. So it's not product based, it's needs based. So imbes na binebenta mo siya na mag-credit card ka because it's something that you can use for purchasing, mas nagfo-focus siya on the life stage of the person. Parang sakto, kailangan safe ka when you commute. So parang di mo dala-dala yung pera mo, it's good for you to have a card that you can use, no? Tapos or kung kunwari hindi enough yung funds mo for a major life stage, let's say you want to have a house built, ito yung solution namin for you, which is a loan. So parang back then they were trying to shift the mindset from being product-centric to being customer-centric. And within the group, they had to reshift it in even the organization, how the organization is structured. So before, ang pagkakastruktura nila doon is parang cards division, cards division, loans division, etc. Ngayon, naka-live stage. Personal banking division, preferred banking division, private banking division. Kasi may mga iba't ibang kliyente na iba't iba yung financial capacity. So pag personal banking, yun yung tinatawag natin mass market. So net yung tayo, yung lahat ng taong pumipila sa branch, if I were to badly put it, no. preferred banking, yun yung may separate na table. Ito yung parang inahati nila yun according to the financial ranges. And then of course yung private bankers, sila yung meron talagang daanan. Alam mo yun, VIP. They're basically your VIP. So dahil nakahati, according to the type of category, yung pagkakagawa ng BPI, mas nakukustomize nila yung solutions according to what the person needs. Kasi syempre, pag personal banking or mas mass market, usually ang mga concerns or yung mga needs natin sa buhay are more on transactions, having to deposit for a personal need, something that I have to get, spend for, etc. Siguro yung preferred more of parang preparing for larger things, etc. So kunwari nagpa-prepare ka for a house or nagpa-prepare ka for something that's a major thing that you can save up for. And then syempre yung private banking, yun talagang sobrang laki ng portfolio mo na paano mo maipamamana ng tama yung kayamanan mo sa mga anak mo, sa kamag-anak mo pag natsugi ka. So ano yan, the whole slew, the paintings, whatever, ganyan. So I'm just trying to simplify it bilang kwentuhan. So yun, specifically for BPI, they have structured it according to the needs or the segment of the customer. Ang FMCG, fun fact guys, FMCG kasi started in the industrial era. So pag industrial revolution, syempre factory, yung usual na na vision nyo of how a factory is, etc. So mas simple yung mga produkto sa fast-moving consumer goods compared to, let's say, banking, which is more complex than usual. Kasi parang binibentahan mo yung tao, pero yung tao marami siyang pangangailangan. But for the FMCG industry, so whether it's ang ibig sabihin kasi ng fast-moving consumer goods, consume, okay, as the word suggests, consume is something that you use. Diba? So, ang Coca-Cola, you consume yung Royal, diba? Pagkabili nyo, you gulp it. Kapag pupunta ka sa tindahan or pag pupunta ka sa convenience store or grocery, pag Heineken, ganun din. Gusto ko, mag-bonding tayo. Sige, bili tayo ng alcohol, ganyan. So, let's buy bottles of Heineken or Tiger, etc. Sa Reckitt naman, kailangan ko ng panlinis sa bahay or I need milk for my baby. So, yun yung kinukonsume mo. And then, of course, you have Mondelez, which is more on the snacking side. I want to have my snacks at home since it's the pandemic and I want to enjoy something while I'm watching Netflix or something like that or while I'm studying, katulad nyo. So yun, mas simple ang FMCG in general. And this is typical of any FMCG. The way that they would normally structure their customers is according to the segments as well. So halimbawa, sa Heineken, meron silang tinatawag na parang mass market segment. Doon namin pinapasok yung beer tsaka tanduay. Kasi ang proposition ng Heineken is mas naka-target siya sa lower tier. Okay? And then you have your mainstream. Ang tawag namin mainstream, ito yung para sa lahat, pwede sa lahat. Mayaman, mahirap, kahit sino, bakla, tomboy, babae, lalaki. Okay, so yun yung Tiger. That's why we were trying to beef up that business kasi it's supposed to reach out to more people. And then you have Heineken, which is a social product which is more targeted towards the premium segment because Heineken is a European company and since it's a European brand, mas naka-target siya sa ating mga premium segment. At least ganun yung pagkaka-structure ng Heineken. And the same also applies for other companies. Reckitt, at least based on my observation, that's how they've structured it. Of course, it's a product of discussion, not just with senior leaders, but sometimes they would also contract support from people outside. So it's a mix of people from sales, of course, the CEO, you have marketing, and of course you have HR who is supporting them with how the organization is structured. You also have supply chain, of course. Ganun din sa Mondelez. So in general, for FMCG, it's much simpler because the products are much fewer and ano siya, it's a collaboration of different departments as to what would make sense. And yung what would make sense na yun, that guiding light is actually the purpose. So ano yung purpose of that company? Purpose kasi is something that is abstract, di ba? Kasi parang kunwari, pag tinanong kayo, let's say si Haji, what is your goal in life? Gusto kong maging artista. So meron kong goal. Tama ba? Haji, yun yung goal mo?
Yes, ma'am. Akong goal, ma'am.
Oo. Ako,
Di,
imong goal.
dili sa artista, ma'am, pero engineer apod guro, ma'am.
Okay. Very good, very good. O yun, so kung ang goal mo is maging napakagaling na inhinyero, akala ko artista yung gusto mo. Pero 'di ba, is goal siya. It's a definite goal. Pero ang difference kasi niya, Haji and the rest of our friends here, ang purpose, it's harder to reach. Pangarap siya na hindi maabot. So, halimbawa lang, ang purpose ng, kunwari lang, UNICEF is to end hunger in the world. So, sobrang tayog niya na aabutin mo siya ng aabutin hanggang malayo na yung nairating mo. So, that's the difference between a goal and a purpose. And in corporations, yun yung tinatry nilang i-shape every now and then. Ang purpose ng Heineken nung time na yun is to brew those bright moments na kapag merong social activity, naaalala nila Heineken products. Kasi 'di ba ngayon, madalas kapag may life stage, birthday ng manang namin, later, mamaya magse-celebrate kami over dinner. So usually 'di ba kapag nagbo-birthday, hindi naman alcohol yung immediate, no? Usually ang alcohol is amongst friends. Pero kapag sa bahay, 'di ba usually soft drinks, kadalasan soft drinks pag may mga Christmas party, Christmas whatever, 'di ba? So it is inculcated in every family's life. So ganun 'yon. Parang in every major life stage, doon na nakapasok yung produkto na 'yon. Kumbaga secondary lang yung pagbenta ng produkto, pero yung first and foremost product. Pero ang nangyayari kasi, sabi nga, maganda yung sinabi ni Nash kanina na parang at the end of the day, corporations are still businesses. They still need to earn money. And I of course don't want to speak on behalf of Unilever, but it's in the news. So ang Unilever, it's our main inspiration for being purpose-driven. Dun, sila talaga yung nagpasimuno nun eh. Purpose is something that you want to achieve, and Procter & Gamble also is a proponent of that. And my mentor actually spent a considerable 14 years in Unilever as an HR director. Actually, yung partner ko ngayon, yung sales director, ex-Unilever din siya. So nagkalat talaga sila in Unilever. Sobrang strong nila sa purpose, which is about sustainability, ensuring that the products that they have, kasi sa kanila iba naman eh, parang halo-halo, may Knorr, may Ladies Choice, may shampoo, 'di ba? Yung shampoo, sa kanila, cream silk, sunsilk, etc. So parang gusto nila, yung aspiration nila is at least kung ano yung kino-communicate nila sa aming mga consumers is for the products to be in every segment of your life. So in the simplest things, kung habang naliligo kayo, 'di ba, naalala niyo siya. So ganun. Ang nangyari daw, yung case ngayon is that the stakeholders are not so happy that people are so focused on purpose. That they were parang na-compromise na yung actual financial goal, which is for them to achieve savings and for them to earn. Kasi at the end of the day, they're still a business. So ano yung naging result ngayon? Nagtatanggal sila ng tao. They're letting go of 2,000 people so that they're able to achieve that business goal. And kwento ko lang sa inyo, actually sa Mondelez, in-invite kami to hold job fairs sa Paco plant. Kasi kailangan namin tulungan sila. Actually, di ba yung Nash, kung naalala mo yung sa Heineken, di ba, nagpa-job placement programs na parang nagpa-workshop to support us, the affected employees, as we transition out of the company. Kasi nakakaba siya eh, di ba? Kasi mawala ka ng trabaho. And kwento lang, yung sa Unilever, parang these are skilled workers sa planta nila, sa Paco plant. So, mga blue collars sila basically. So, yun. Di ba? Parang, so my point is, parang, what's going on in the minds of people is they try to understand their purpose. Kasi yun yung core eh. That's a very core of the business. And the purpose is translated to specific goals. Pero yung goals na yun, dapat, ang palagi natin tinitingnan is always the end user. And the end user are the consumers. So, kailangan intindihin yung behaviors ng consumers para alam mo kung paano mo sila bebentahan. That's how our leaders think. And lahat flows from there. Whether it's the organization structure, whether it's the marketing plan, kung ano yung mga nakikita yung commercials, yun yung pinanggagalingan nila. It's the purpose and it's how they view their customers. And it's also about striking the balance between purpose and making money. Kasi at the end of the day, kailangan pa rin ng pangpasweldo para makakain kami lahat. So you have to be idealistic and pragmatic at the same time and set that common ground. If I were to share siguro yung reality na yun, kasi sometimes diba, napaka-idealistic natin, it's grounding ourselves na kapag whether you are whether you are an entrepreneur or whether you are working for a corporation, kailangan ng pag-iisip mo is negosyante ka. Ako yung may-ari ng negosyo nito. Kung ako yung may-ari ng negosyo na to and my money is at stake. Di ba pag nag-invest sa stocks, shit, ipapasok ko tong pera na to, pero babagsak ba to, kikita ba to? Is this worth my money? Ganun din naman kayo, di ba? Pag nagpo-purchase kayo ng gamit or ng product, it's like that. So, ganun din yun. When you work for a corporation or whether you are part of a startup, you have to think na parang how you would utilize your resources to grow it. So, I'm not sure, Nash, if I was able to address the question that you posed earlier. I think I may have expounded a little bit more beyond knowing the customer. So, yep, over to you, Nash.
Well said po. On my end, that was very, very clear po, especially when when you were talking about the value that value proposition as well as to where and how to sell them. So that's why you could see a lot of products sa market na parang the same ones. So there are even companies that they are I think I can name a few na yung companies is they are selling shampoos, but yung isa is for high end, the other one is yung sa mass market na sinasabi ni Miss Ai. Just like on our end when we were in Heineken, so yung high end is yung Heineken. And then for the mass market we have the beer and called 45. So that is one thing that usually companies or corporations take into consideration. So may segmentation talaga of the target markets, hindi na one size fits all. So we have to understand, especially in terms in economic clusters nga, there are A, B, C, D, E. So that's one thing that you need to understand when you're starting a business, as well as yung sinabi ni Miss Ai na choosing your the way you choose your customer. So these are decisions that you take into consideration. Hindi lang po ito na if you do research in engineering, they also do research, specifically market research. These things, especially yung mga ads na nakikita ninyo, that's been studied before they were composed. So at least majority are being studied before they are being viewed aired rather. So I will stop there before I proceed. Baka may tanong pa to everyone who's still here. Maybe you have questions, clarifications. This is the venue for you to ask before I move on to the next session po.
Any curious cat out there? Meron ba kayong kahit anong tanong? Kahit ano, tungkol sa akin, tungkol sa kumpanya that I've worked for, or any curious question that you would like to ask. And yeah, just to reassure you, this is a safe space kasi nagkukwentuhan lang naman tayo. So anybody guys? Any brave soul?
Yung sabi nga ni Miss Ai, yung Filipino shy. So this is,
diba?
yeah, yun nga. Before, ang shy-shy ko pa pero mafo-force ka talaga to participate when I was with Heineken.
Naitawid nga ni Nash, diba? Kaya nga siya valued. Valued by the company. So, ganun siya. Ganun din tayo. So, sige. Anybody who would like to ask? Walang maling tanong, walang tamang tanong, walang tangang tanong.
Yeah, that's right.
Valid lahat ng tanong. So, anybody?
Nahihiya po talaga. Maybe you could provide your email, Miss Ai. Would it be okay if I was provide the email po so that in case they have questions, they could just directly email it to you po?
Sure. Ano yan? I will share it to the chat now.
Okay, thank you.
All
Sige
right.
po. To move on po, I think this would be my last point for this evening. So having all this wealth of experience in the corporate world, so I think ang dami na, pero just so that to put it on context, What are some key takeaways that you would like to share to our future engineers? Should they take the path of being an entrepreneur or just be in the corporate world? So specifically in terms of knowing their customers or their stakeholders, identifying value proposition, and understanding the market.
Right. That's a great question, no, Nash. Thank you for that. Kasi parang ito yung something that is practical that you can use for when you start your career. Actually, ano siya, applicable siya, whether it's in corporations, whether it's for startups, whether it's starting a business, or in the case of Princess, isa sa ano niya is to pursue law school, diba? And I think the key thing that you should practice as a starter, as you begin your career, is really to listen. Um, if you listen, mas marami kayong natututunan from the person, whether it's a leader, whether it's someone who's working at the assembly line, whether it's a senior leader, whether it's a mid-career leader, or kung sino man yung direct report niya. I think it pays to listen kasi hindi ka makaka-proceed with any solution or intervention if you're not able to establish that. Okay, so sorry, let me step back. When you listen, before you can even listen, you have to establish rapport, establish that relationship, and I am quite an advocate of that. So this is a language that is most familiar to Nash, no? Kasi nagkaroon kami ng virtual leadership summit. And Heineken espouses four behaviors. Meron kami tinatawag na four leadership behaviors. And it's connect, shape, develop, and deliver. So kung mapapansin ninyo, dun sa apat na steps na yun, connect, shape, develop, and deliver, the first leadership behavior that you have to master, well, not really master, but something that you have to demonstrate before you can even proceed with the three others is connect. If hindi ka makapag-connect with the person that you're working with, buwag yan, mahirapan ka. Mahirapan kang mang-shape. And sorry for the word, I'm so sorry. We're a Catholic school, but it's pangungoops, di ba? So pag hindi, if you're not able to establish that rapport with the person, you will run over them like a tractor. Kasi you will just push for your agenda. So before you can even understand the business, you have to establish those relationships with them. And how will you be able to do that? It's to constantly talk to the people within the business. Kasi kapag sobrang naka-cooped up ka in your own work as an engineer, you won't be able to provide insightful inputs to your partners. So yun yung ginagawa ko. Actually, may missing piece nga ako na hindi ko magawa ngayon during the pandemic. And it's to actually do route visits, market visits. I was supposed to do one nung December. But then because of the pandemic, I couldn't go out. Pero at least yung mga senior leaders namin, bumisita sila sa north area to visit the stores and really understand, talk to the tinderas and really understand, talk to the leaders and really understand what's going on. So dalawa yun, guys. So you have two types of customers. You have external customers, which are the people who are consuming your product. And then you have internal customers. So internal customers are basically yung mga ka-opisina ninyo that you have to work with para ma-introduce nyo yung solution na yun. So ako, as an HR partner, I have to be able to establish relationships with both, well, mostly with internal customers kasi HR ako. Pero kailangan naiintindihan ko rin kung ano yung pinanggagalingan ng external customers ko. So establishing relationships means that's where you will demonstrate ability to listen. So listening means establishing rapport with them, talking to them, asking curious questions, listening to what they have to say, etc. And when you gather those things, when you gather insights from them, you're able to formulate a diagnosis or an impactful insight. So actually, super quick kwento. In Mondelez, syempre I won't dahil nga confidential and I'm currently representing the company, I won't delve into specific details. Pero I will share with you kung ano yung mga naging experience ko so far. No? in terms of behavior. So, ako, nung nagtatrabaho ako sa supply chain, actually, Nash, na-realize ko, sobrang dali pala. Napaka-easy peasy to work and sobrang fun to work with supply chain because ang mga supply chain people or mga katulad nyo na inhinyero, sobrang naka-wire na sa inyo yung proseso. May step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. And makina na kayo Makina na kayo mag-isip. So, ang kailangan ko na lang gawin is dagdagan ng heart element and it's for me to empathize. So, sabi ko, I have to listen to them. So, nung naka-work namin, nung nasa Heineken kami, and the same also applies by the way when I worked for Reckitt, kailangan ko lang i-provide sa kanila yung proseso, engage the leader, okay ka na. Sobrang solved ka na. So, si Nikolai, who was our Bulgarian supply chain director, yung kinukwento ni Nash, mahirap man siyang kausapin kasi sobrang dami niyang tanong. Pero basta na-provide mo sa kanya yung proper context and na-provide mo sa kanya yung proper process, sobrang solved na siya. Sabi niya, game. Basta ikasisikat ko. Let's get people on board. So we got people on board, yung brewery manager. So yung isa doon is the boss, the leader of Nash in El Salvador, si Joseph. We have Ralph Edeza from logistics. Tapos yung technical trainer namin, si Leo, who worked on some things as we did some activities for the rest of the organization. As in, nagpapakahirap ako nung time na yun. Narealize ko, sabi ko, grabe, first world problems pala yung nirereklamo ko nung panahon na yun. And then now I'm faced with people in sales. Ibang animal ang sales because yung sales, wala silang pakialam sa step 1 until step 10. Ang pakialam nila is step 10. Tapos, take me through the little details. Wala na akong pakialam with 8765431. Bigyan mo na ako ng 10 and 9, okay na ako doon. So, imagine mo bumaliktad, nag-180 yung brain cells ko when that happened. And recently, when we communicated an engagement activity to them last Thursday lang. So talagang strategize talaga namin yan ng sales director namin. Budol na budol talaga as in. Tapos para, sige, ganito yung sasabihin, yung problema, yung pain point or the leaders, etc. Chef, nung kinommunicate namin yun, nag-away silang lahat. Kasi iba-iba yung perspective nila. Diba? Ganun kayo, diba? Pag kunwari nag-introduce kayo ng solusyon as engineers, hindi lahat ng tao mag-agree. Kasi may kanya-kanya silang pinanggagalingan or principles. So, I was so disappointed nung Thursday. I was so annoyed because those are some of the few failures. Marami pala failures. Pero parang yun yung failure ko nung time na yun. Sabi ko, okay, I wanna take it as an opportunity for me to re-strategize. Anong ginawa namin nung linggo na to? Ang ginawa ko, dahil hindi nagkakasundo yung mga tao sa taas, kinausap ko sila pa isa-isa. Nakinig ako sa kanila kung ano yung pinanggagalingan nila. What is your pain point from your lens, etc., etc., etc. And then, actually, before this, I processed it with my sales director. So, sobrang fresh off the press ko, guys. And we were trying to strike the balance with what is right. So, kayo, di ba, as engineers, meron kayong konsepto Ano yung tama na blueprint na makakabuti para dun sa negosyo? And kung ano yung pinanggagalingan nila. So, yun yung customer. Where is the customer coming from? Nagbigay na example kanina si Nash na parang, bakit namin aayusin yung Heineken if the best beer in the world siya? Yung mga Pilipino, ayaw namin yan. Ano pakialam namin sa Heineken? Pakla-pakla niyan, tapos ang mahal-mahal niyan. Magsasanmig kami kasi yun yung nakasanayan namin. Because that is what most appeals to the Filipino consumer. Because San Miguel has been a legacy for the longest time. So, ganun din. Actually, parang honestly, wala pa kaming sagot. Nung sales director, naputol kami actually, Nash. So, homework ko yan after this. Pero parang, merong tama, which is to address leadership. But how will you communicate it to them? Kasi para sa kanila, it's not about that. It's fixing the transaction. But how do you break it to them gently na, guys, kayo yung problema? So, wala pa akong sagot to. So, ang ginagawa ko, kinausap ko sila pa isa-isa and we will converge tomorrow kasi we would normally meet on a weekly basis. So, ganun lang. Yun yung payo ko sa inyo. For you to thrive in the business, what's important is for you to establish that relationship. And when you establish that relationship, you listen to them. Then you stop there first. Hindi ko muna ituturo sa inyo yung false law kasi mga bebe pa kayo, mga bata pa kayo. Pero siguro, as preview guys, kailangan nyo munang mahulma yun, yung human skill of listening. and establishing rapport. But it doesn't necessarily mean that when you establish rapport with them, you will say yes to everything. Iba yun, iba yun. And I will say that next time pag kinausap na ako. But that's the first step, guys. That's my, if to keep it simple, that is my best advice for all of you.
Yes po. Just to provide also addition is this is actually what Sir Hope shared last time we're in. His company is collecting junks. So he really went through the process. He went through the process, and that's actually knowing your one way of knowing your customer, their pain points. So Miss Ai, thank you so much for that. I think that's it on our end. May mga tanong pa po ba or are we good?
May questions ba? Kasi ganito guys, kung wala kayong questions, okay lang. Pero actually, may baon ako sa inyo. Magtatanong ako ng dalawa. Pero okay lang. I mean, if you have questions, I'll answer them for you. Pero kung hindi, meron akong thought-provoking question that I will ask.
Shoot away po.
Okay, so sige, let's give a few minutes. If anybody has clarifications or tanong. Okay? Ready na ako sa bala ko na.
Sige po, go.
Sige, ganito ha. I'm not sure kung may mag-volunteer sa inyo, pero siguro I might need the help of Nash. Maybe ayoko naman kasi parang graded dissertation ko, guys. Parang kapihan nga, diba? Pero more of like an interesting question. Siguro just one question. Kayo yung may-ari ng kumpanya. Ano to? HR. So, syempre, dahil HR ako, HR din yung mga tatanungin ko. Pero I want you to connect it to being an entrepreneur. So, isipin nyo, parang kayo yung either may-ari ng kumpanya or kayo yung boss, okay? So, meron kayong team. Who would you value more? Miss Universe question. Who would you value more? A person who is so good in what he or she does, but can bring in money to the organization. Pero salbahe siyang tao. Or someone na parang very collaborative, someone who's very nice, but they can only medyo slow yung magiging pace niya of learning. So that's a question that I'd like to ask from anybody, and there are no right or wrong answers. It's meant to stimulate your brains and hearts na kapag andun na kayo sa sitwasyon na yun, pag may-ari na kayo ng negosyo or kayo yung nagli-lead ng kumpanya, ano yung papasok sa utak niyo? So I'm curious, and sure I might need help from Nash on asking someone. And huwag kayo matakot. Walang mali or tamang sagot.
Sige, isali po namin yan sa feedback form. Isali ko po yung tanong na yan po.
Yep.
Sa feedback form.
Yep.
Sige po.
Alright.
May gusto sumagot?
Meron ba? Na-curious lang ako. Pero walang pilitan, guys.
Sige po. I think we're good.
Ayun.
Miss Princess, go!
Siguro lang, personally.
Access. So usually, yan yung mga key contributors, masundalo mo yan. Pero may mga iba naman, yung syempre yung ideal na gusto natin, mabait na nga sila, maganda yung character nila, tapos mataas pa yung quality of output nila. So yun yung nasa upper right. Yun yung high-performing, high-trust. Pero syempre, kadalasan, meron tayong mga tao in the middle ground, such as pwedeng mataas yung trust nila, pero okay lang naman yung performance. Alam mo, sa totoo lang, yung pinaka-ideal are those in the middle. Bakit? Kasi hindi mo kailangang makuha yung full potential immediately ng tao. Kasi meron kang leaders who can hone the person. Kaya nga tayo may tinatawag na potential. We unleash the potential in the person. Pero dapat, from the get-go, yung character niya is already good. Kasi ang character is built over time. Hindi siya nakukuha lang sa work, but you actually get it, let's say, from school. This is part of your character formation. You get it from your friends, you get it from your neighbors, you get it from your family. So marami siya, very complex, and tayo lahat, iba-iba yung makeup natin as persons. So mas mahirap baguhin ang character, but yung skills, typically, it is honeable. Yun yung mas madaling ma-unlearn. But of course, to everyone's point. So tama rin yung sinasabi ni Princess na merong mga companies who choose to go for high skills muna kasi yun yung kinakailangan nung panahon na yun. We need to earn money. Okay, tapos ayusin na lang natin yung character. But the other side naman, which is more on the idealistic, more on si Jessa and also si Crystal, is parang start with a good base in terms of the values. Tapos, i-hone mo na lang siya along the way. So, my takeaway there is, mahirap talaga maging leader, mahirap talaga maging negosyante because you have to, wala nang, di ba madalas sa school, black and white. Marami kayong ma-encounter na gray
Yeah.
sa when you enter the real world. So you have to strike that balance and always incorporate your conscience. Always incorporate, diba? It's good that we are exposed to the Ignatian way of education, and as Catholics, yun yung ini-impart sa atin ng Ignatian education, ng Athenian education. So yun yung flavor that we will introduce or demonstrate for when we work for a corporation or when we work for a startup. It's balancing what needs to be done and how it can be done, which is yung character or yung principle. So, yep, that's it for me.
Yeah, a lot of inputs for, and I can personally stand with that explanation or with that discussion po, because it's not really enough even if you're the best in that area. If you don't collaborate, if you don't have those skills, it's going to be a hard road. So yun nga, there are no right or wrong answers. Sometimes it depends on the situation, but these are some points that we can provide you to confuse you more. Just kidding. Just for you to think about. And with that, I think I will be reposting again the feedback form. Mag-talk lang kami ni Miss Ai so that it could be improved po for your consumption. Again, this recording will be posted on your e-learn, and tomorrow we will start on time tomorrow. Apologies for that. I personally had a marathon of meetings, as well as Miss I had a marathon talaga ng meetings since 8 a.m. 7 a.m. in the morning. So with that, I'd like to share my screen for a while to show our appreciation to Miss Ai. Miss Ai, thank you so much. So of in behalf of the Savior, in behalf of our class, we would like to present the certificate of appreciation to you. So allow me to read the citation. Xavier University, Ateneo de Cagayan, College of Engineering, Chemical Engineering Department, presents the certificate of appreciation to Miss Alaris Domingo Antonio from Mondelez International for generously imparting her knowledge and experience on this session on value proposition, customer and markets, a guide to how corporations think during the Kapihan session series of our class, Technopreneurship, given this third day of March 2022 at the College of Engineering, Xavier University, Ateneo de Cagayan, Cagayan de Oro City. Signed, yours truly, the instructor and the chairman of the Chemical Engineering Department, Engineer Edwin Richard Ortiz. Miss Ai, Miss Alaris Domingo, thank you so much for that. And yes po. And again, I'd like to thank everybody for staying this late. Thank you so much for your very active participation. So with that, I'd like to close this session with a closing prayer. So may I request Miss Jessa Kahulugan to lead the closing prayer.